A new term, another Supreme Court scandal. We're not even a month into the Supreme Court's new term, and yet another bombshell report has surfaced, this one focusing on the Trump administration's handling of allegations of sexual misconduct against Justice Brett Kavanaugh. This week, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse released a report accusing the administration of steering a flawed and incomplete investigation of the sexual assault allegations against Kavanaugh that came to light in 2018, before Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court was confirmed. The report, titled Unworthy of Reliance, details the Trump's White House efforts to thwart the FBI's probe into the Supreme Court pick. The sexual assault allegations themselves were first raised in 2018 by the law professor Christine Blasey Ford. She accused Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct in the 1980s. Later, two additional women also came forward with similar claims. This week's report found that the Trump White House exercised total control over the investigation, including preventing the FBI from following up on numerous leads and blocking interviews with key witnesses. The Trump administration also allegedly instructed the FBI not to use its tip line, instead forwarding tips that were intended for law enforcement directly to the White House. According to the report, quote, if anything, the White House may have used the tip line to steer FBI investigators away from derogatory or damaging information, end quote. Unsurprisingly, the FBI's sham investigation failed to uncover corroborating evidence, and the Senate confirmed Kavanaugh shortly thereafter. In other words, Americans were collectively hoodwinked to secure the nomination of an unelected ideological extremist who would go on to become part of a right-wing bloc of justices that has mounted an unprecedented assault on our democratic foundations and specifically against the freedom and bodily autonomy of American women. This includes recent decisions that drastically weaken the authority of federal agencies tasked with protecting the public in critical areas, from environmental protection to consumer rights to health care to education. Kavanaugh also ruled to significantly expand presidential immunity, a widely condemned decision that effectively shields Trump from accountability for his role in the January 6th coup attempt. Many experts warn that this decision will one day be regarded as a pivotal moment that set the stage for another coup, one which Trump is currently laying the groundwork for. This latest report only adds to a series of ethics scandals that have rocked the Supreme Court in recent years, deepening its crisis of legitimacy as approval ratings continue to sink to historic lows. These include revelations that Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito failed to disclose lavish gifts from conservative billionaires. The court's conservative majority, meanwhile, has resisted calls to regulate itself. Justice Thomas, for example, ignored calls to recuse himself from cases related to the January 6th Capitol riot, despite reports that his wife was involved in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Justice Alito also chose not to recuse himself from cases related to January 6th after it was revealed that a flag associated with election denial was displayed outside his Virginia home in the days following the riot. Lawmakers and legal experts alike warn that this extremist bloc on the Supreme Court, which includes Kavanaugh, has accrued enormous power at the expense of other branches of government, circumventing the legislative process entirely to impose a number of deeply unpopular rulings, including a landmark decision to strip women of their constitutional right to an abortion. This term, the Supreme Court will preside over several cases affecting millions of Americans, from water quality standards to overtime wages to Medicare reimbursement to transgender rights. Meanwhile, the court's unchecked power grab and lack of accountability are leading to growing demands for reforms. In July, the Biden administration proposed a three-pronged package to reform the Supreme Court. It included an enforceable code of conduct, 18-year term limits, and a constitutional amendment to undo the sweeping presidential immunity granted in Trump v. United States. The Senate Judiciary Committee over the summer also advanced a bill penned by my next guest, the Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. The bill, titled the Supreme Court Ethics, Recusal, and Transparency Act, includes a binding ethics code. Next month's elections could make or break legislative efforts to fix the nation's highest court. Calls to expand the number of sitting justices are also on the rise. According to the constitutional law scholar Kermit Roosevelt, quote, we are witnessing a minority takeover of our democracy. The Supreme Court has stood by in the face of some anti-democratic actions. It has allowed partisan gerrymanders. It has allowed states to impose burdens on voting as a response to imaginary threats of fraud. More striking, the court has itself intervened in the political process. The only reform that fixes this problem now is court expansion. That could give us a majority of justices who would defend democracy against these assaults instead of participating in them. I have always viewed expansion as a last resort, the fire axe in the glass case on the wall. But we may be at the point of breaking that glass now. Court expansion may be the only thing that will save our democracy for the next generation, end quote. For more on this, I am joined by the Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He released a shocking report this week revealing that the Trump White House actively sabotaged an FBI investigation into multiple sexual assault allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me on, Ali.
Let's talk about this. You know, in real time, many of us wondered why the FBI is not able to dig up some basic information around the allegations that were swirling around Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation process. You have now told us what we thought to be true, that Trump used his office to protect another powerful man in government, an office that Kavanaugh has now used to protect Donald Trump from criminal liability. Tell me about the consequences of what you have learned.
Well, there were two big lies that the American people were told and two dirty tricks. The big lies were the president saying that the FBI had free rein to investigate where it wanted and whom it wanted, when that was completely not true. The White House controlled every iota of the investigation. And the second big lie was that there was some procedure that the FBI was following, and you could count on them to do the right thing because they were doing this investigation, quote, by the book. Well, turns out they had no free rein. Turns out there was no book for a supplemental background investigation. There literally is no procedure other than do what the White House tells you. So those were the two pretty big lies. The dirty tricks were to stop the FBI from looking at corroboration, and then have Republican senators in great numbers say, oh, well, we can't believe her because there was no corroboration, without anybody knowing that corroboration had been specifically discarded as an avenue of investigation by the FBI. And the last was this tip line that produced thousands of tips, probably many dozens of truly credible tips, credible enough to be flagged by the FBI for the White House, but they never got a signal from the White House to investigate any of them. So at the end of that big tip line effort, there were exactly 0 FBI investigative steps taken.
Senator, you understand these things probably better than I do, and most of us do. It seems wild that the FBI would have information that the White House could veto them pursuing in the pursuit of an investigation, a legal investigation. Is there anything normal about that, or is that as crazy as it sounds to me?
Well, it's a little bit crazy, but it also reflects the rarity of this circumstance. This is not the FBI acting as a law enforcement agency. This is not the FBI acting as the background investigation agency where it has regular procedures. This is when there's a supplemental background investigation, because you remember Dr. Blasey Ford's allegations came up late in the process after all of that was done. So this was done under the rules for a supplemental background investigation, which both the White House and the Department of Justice and the FBI declined to inform the American people. Meant there are no rules. The White House makes every decision, and their decision here was do exactly what we say and no more, no corroboration, no tip line investigation.
I want to speak more broadly about things you and I have talked about in the past. According to a USA Today Ipsos poll going back to August, Americans are overwhelmingly in favor of reforming the Supreme Court. Now, that has many flavors, but something needs to be done. 76% of Americans support a binding ethics code. And that, by the way, apparently includes 70% of Republicans and 89% of Democrats. So clearly this has popular backing across party lines. It shouldn't be partisan at all. So why are we not seeing some of these reforms, including a binding ethics code, happening already?
I think because there's a linkage between some of the decisions that are coming out of these Federalist Society justices on the Supreme Court and the billionaire gifts program that is giving them lifestyles of the rich and famous, $100,000+ vacations. paying for kids that they take care of's tuition, taking care of their mom and paying the rent. All this stuff piles up, and it's really obscene. But I think it also affects the judgments of the court. And I think Republicans whose political financing comes heavily from the same right-wing billionaire elite that was behind capturing the court and running the billionaire gifts program, they're being told by their big donors, don't you dare mess up our situation here. And so they won't do what is obvious. I mean, Ali, literally every official in this country, local, county, state, other federal, everybody is subject to some basic fact-finding if there's an allegation made about their misconduct.
Yeah.
There are only 9 people in government anywhere who have literally no responsibility to either tell the truth about what they did or have neutral fact-finding about what they did. And that is the 9 justices of the Supreme Court. It just is an untenable situation.
And just to be clear, no one is suggesting that accountability should be about their rulings, right? We are not trying to meddle with the independence of the judiciary as much as you may hate some of their rulings. We are talking about ethics, very simply, just ethics, things that would be unethical for you to do in the course of conducting your job. We're not talking about the ability to criticize Supreme Court rulings.
Correct. And there's a clear break between a court in its adjudicative role and a court in its administrative role.
Right.
And every single one of the 50 state Supreme Courts have figured out a way on the administrative side to check on the ethics of their Supreme Court justices. So it's an easy lay down hand to do the same thing at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
They just don't want to.
Yeah. But apparently the rest of us do. So someone's going to have to win this showdown.